Welcome, Wanderers. My name is Mark, and today we are reading At the Speed of Shakespeare. We are still on Henry IV, Part 1, Act 1, Scene 1. We left off in the middle of Henry IV's opening speech, the line and a half that ends, "The edge of war, like an ill-sheathed knife, no more shall cut his master." So now we're going to hear the rest of this speech. I guess I should recap it very quickly. In Richard II, Henry Bolingbroke, who is King Richard II's first cousin, usurps the crown, takes the crown from him by force, and imprisons Richard II, and then Richard II is killed. Henry, now King Henry IV, acts like he doesn't have anything to do with it. Who knows? But in any event, now Henry IV he's the king, except now he wants the kingdom to come together. Basically what he's talking about is he wants the nobles to come together and be together and just not fight each other. And now he's talked about, so the whole first part of this speech is about how we're all going to march together now, march all one way and be no more opposed against acquaintance, kindred, and allies. The edge of war, like an ill-sheathed knife, no more shall cut his master. It's a very beautiful way to say that. Now he's going to go on and say what it is that we're going to do now that we're not fighting each other anymore. Here's what we're going to do with our newfound unity. Therefore, friends, as far as to the sepulchre of Christ. Sepulchre is, I think, an old-fashioned word for a tomb. The sepulchre of Christ, whose soldier now under whose blessed cross we are impressed and engaged to fight. Forthwith the power of English shall we levy, whose arms were molded in their mother's womb, to chase these pagans in those holy fields, over whose acres walked those blessed feet, which 1400 years ago were nailed for our advantage on the bitter cross. So 1400 years ago, this is about the year 1400, maybe 1401, 1402, something like that. And so he means that when Jesus was crucified, were nailed for our advantage, those blessed feet whose 1400 years ago were nailed for our advantage on the bitter cross. He's saying that we're going to go on a crusade. And though he calls them to chase these pagans, we know that the Muslims who control the Holy Land at that point in time are not pagans. They are monotheists, like the Christians. But I guess that's how they refer to them as pagans, because they're going to fight them. And whose arms were molded in their mother's womb to chase these pagans in those holy fields. Okay, so that's what we'd like to do. But this, our purpose now, is 12-month old. I think what he's saying there is that, okay, but we've been talking about this for a year now. It's 12-month old. And bootless, and bootless is, I guess, an old way of saying pointless. And bootless 'tis to tell you we will go. Right? We know we've been planning to do this. Therefore we meet not now. I don't know what he means by meet not now. They are meeting now. Maybe what he means is we meet not now to go on crusade. We're not going now. It's bootless 'tis to tell you we will go. Therefore we meet not now. Then let me hear of you, my gentle cousin Westmoreland, what yesternight our council did decree in forwarding this dear expedience. Oh, I see what he's saying. He's not saying therefore, not therefore because, but therefore. Bootless 'tis to tell you we will go. Therefore we meet not now. Meaning for that reason we're not meeting now. We're meeting now, but not for the reason not to say that we're going to go on a crusade, because we've already known we're going to do that for a year. Okay, I got this now. Therefore we meet not now. Then let me hear of you, my gentle cousin Westmoreland. Westmoreland is, okay, so it's his cousin, another nobleman. What yesternight, I guess that means yet last night, our council did decree in forwarding this dear expedience. Meaning, why did we have to meet together so quickly? What's going on here? What did we hear? I love Westmoreland. Now we're going to hear from Westmoreland. Westmoreland is the first person other than King Henry to speak in this play. And he says, I always imagine he delivers this in the tone of someone who works for somebody important, maybe someone who serves the king in a very close capacity, and he has to deliver some bad news, but he does it as diplomatically as possible because he never liked to be the one to deliver bad news to the king. Even though Henry Bolingbroke, King Henry IV, he's very level-headed and calm. He's not a lunatic, but still. So I imagine he's saying it like this: "My liege, let's start again. My liege, this haste was hot in question, and many limits of the charge set down but just tonight." It's a way of saying, you know how like if you have to give someone bad news, and you don't just come out and give them the bad news. You say, you got to understand, this is very complicated. A lot of things are going on. I don't have all the information. I just got pulled into this. This is somebody else's job. I don't know what's going on. And many limits of the chart set down but yesternight. And I think what that I can't parse that out word by word, but I think what that means is something like, I don't have all the information, but what I do have, I only got yesternight. He uses that same word, but yesternight. When all athwart, there came a post from Wales, loaden with heavy news. I love that, heavy news. Whose worst was that the noble Mortimer, I think, is another nobleman that fights for their side. So we're the noble Mortimer leading the men of Herefordshire. Herefordshire must be. I think Hereford is where King Henry was actually born, or where he was. So because I think he was known as the Duke of Hereford before he was the king, leading the men of Herefordshire to fight against the irregular and wild Glendower. Glendower was a real person, legendary leader of the Welsh. And so this Mortimer leads the men of Herefordshire against this Glendower and his Welsh army. And it sounds like it didn't go well. Was by the rude hands of that Welshman taken. 1,000 of his people butchered, meaning Mortimer's men butchered, so that means Englishmen that are butchered. 1,000, right? Not just killed, but they were butchered. Upon whose dead corpse there was such misuse, such beastly, shameless transformation by those Welsh women done, as may not be without much shame retold or spoken of. So this didn't go well, leading the men of Herefordshire against the rude hands of the Welshman, the irregular and wild Glendower. The way they describe him, he's irregular and wild. So it was a rout. It didn't go well. And the king says, very simply, King Henry, ever level-headed, don't dwell on things that you can't change anymore. It seems then that the tidings of this broil break off our business for the Holy Land. It sounds almost like he's gotten used to this idea that, okay, for a year we've been talking about doing this, and for some reason we keep having to deal with fights amongst each other or whatever, these little rebellions in the land. And Westmoreland, he goes on, this matched with other did, my gracious lord, for more uneven and unwelcome news came from the north, and thus it did import. On Holy Rood Day, the gallant Hotspur, we're going to hear a lot about Hotspur in this play. Hotspur there, young Harry Percy, that's his real name is Harry Percy, but he's known as Hotspur because he has a bad temper. And brave Archibald, that ever valiant and approved Scot. Okay, the English are fighting with the Scots, so Hotspur leading the English, this brave Archibald leading the Scots, but he calls him brave, so I wonder if that means that they view the Scots as not like the irregular and wild Glendower, not like the Welsh, whom they probably see as maybe a kind of savage, but the Scots are at least brave. Ever valiant and approved Scot at Humbledon met, wherever Humbledon is, where they did spend a sad and bloody hour. It's a great line, a sad and bloody hour. As by the discharge of their artillery and shape of likelihood the news was told, for he that brought them in the very heat and pride of their contention, so it was maybe right in the middle of the battle, contention is another way of saying battle, did take horse uncertain of the issue anyway. So we don't know what happened, for he that brought them. Maybe that means the news, he that brought the news. It was wherever our news bearer was did take horse uncertain of the issue anyway. I wonder if that was Westmoreland. Maybe not, probably not, but did take horse. Sort of like as if he were referring to himself in the third person. I don't think that's what's happening, but that would be funny if it did happen that way. And the king moves immediately. So Westmoreland's saying that they had a sad and bloody hour. It was just very, very violent, and we're not really sure how it went. And maybe he feels good that at least I don't have to give the king the news that somebody lost. At least they might have gotten away. Maybe Hotspur won, but we don't know. And the king says, turning to somebody else now. All right, the king has very good information. You'll see the king, Henry IV, is definitely very, very shrewd and very organized, and he knows what he's doing. But these are tough times. Here is a dear, a true industrious friend. I wonder if he's insulting Worcester a little bit there. Maybe I should just read this without interrupting myself. Here is a dear, a true industrious friend, Sir Walter Blount, new lighted from his horse. I love this. Stained with the variation of each soil betwixt that Humbleton and this seat of ours. Shakespeare just pulls that metaphor out of his head. Not really a metaphor, it's more like an observation. I wonder if maybe his whole life he always noticed that the horses were stained with the variation of each soil. I know I said I wasn't going to interrupt myself, but I love this line. Betwixt that Humbleton and the seat of ours. So I guess if you rode on a horse a long distance, you would notice, or if you're Shakespeare, you would notice that there was mud caked on the horse's legs, and maybe probably on the rider's legs too. There's lots of mud everywhere, and you could tell by looking at the makeup of the soil, maybe the consistency of it or the color of it or whatever, where the different places that they went. That's interesting. I never would have thought of that. I never would have thought of looking at somebody's car and saying like, oh, looking at the dirt on their car, I can tell that you drove a great distance and you must be tired. Betwixt that Humbleton and this seat of ours, and he that brought us smooth, he hath brought us smooth and welcome news, right? Worcester, you brought us only, what does he say? Uneven and unwelcome news, but he brings us smooth and welcome news. He flips the description there. The Earl of Douglas is discomfited. So, all right, so Walter Blount has brought him news. And not only does King Henry know that he's got news here, but King Henry already knows what the news is. So he already talked to this guy ahead of time. King Henry knows he's very good at keeping his ear to the ground. The Earl of Douglas is discomfited. So that's good, because the Earl of Douglas is a Scot. 10,000 bold Scots, 22 knights, balked in their own blood, did Sir Walter see on Humbleton's plains. Of prisoners, Hotspur took Murdoch, Earl of Fife, and eldest son to beaten Douglas. Right, so he took this Douglas guy's eldest son. And the Earl of Athol, of Moray, Angus, and Menteith. And is this not an is not this an honorable spoil, a gallant prize? Huh, cousin, is it not? And Westmoreland has to agree. In faith, it is a conquest for a prince to boast of. And now the king moves on to something else, because Westmoreland has said something. Okay, so what we know now is that this battle at Humbleton went well for the English. So they lost against this Glendower, but they won against the Scots. And the reason that they won is because Hotspur was leading them. Hotspur was a very good warrior. And now the king, and when Westmoreland says a conquest for a prince to boast of, the word prince triggers the king to think of something that he doesn't like thinking of. And he says, yea, now this is the king speaking, there thou makest me sad and makest me sin in envy makest me sin in envy. It's the 10th commandment, thou shalt not envy. That my Lord Northumberland should be the father to so blessed a son who is the theme of honor's tongue. The theme of honor's tongue. That's a great Shakespeare line. Amongst a grove, the very straightest plant, who is sweet fortune's minion and her pride, whilst I, by looking on the praise of him, see right and dishonest stain the brow of my young Harry. See right and dishonest stain the brow of my young Harry. So the king has a son named Harry as well, But I guess this Harry, the king is not so proud of his Harry as he is of this Earl of Northumberland's Harry. And the Earl of Northumberland, we'll find out, is also named Harry. So there's a lot of, so that's Henry is the king, and Henry is the Prince of Wales, and Henry, the Duke of Northumberland, or the Earl of Northumberland, and then Henry, his son, Henry Percy, also known as Harry Percy or Hotspur. So there's a lot of Henrys in this play. And the king goes on, "Oh, that it could be proved that some night-tripping fairy had exchanged in cradle clothes our children where they lay, and called mine Percy his Plantagenet." And even though they used to pronounce it, I think, Plantagenet sometimes, but you have to say it Plantagenet to rhyme with lay. "Then would I have his Harry and he mine." Shakespeare likes this metaphor, or this image, I should say, an image of children changing positions, of one parent taking another's child. I think he kind of likes this idea of switching places, so he likes to bring this up. "But let him from my thoughts. What think you cause," meaning cousin, "of this young Percy's pride?" So first he hears about Percy. He's happy Hotspur has done well and won. He even goes so far as to say that I'm jealous of Percy and wish that he was my son, and my actual son, somebody else's, his father's. But now he's going to say, "But what think you cause of this young Percy's pride?" What's this all about? "The prisoners which he in this adventure hath surprised, to his own use he keeps, and sends me word I shall have none but Murdoch, Earl of Fife." It took me a while to figure out what's going on here. The Hotspur has taken prisoners of the Scots, and I guess under the rules of, I don't know, chivalry, or the rules of the medieval world of fiefdoms, and of vassals, and of doing service to the king, that kind of thing. You were supposed to give the king the prisoner for the king to keep. The king was supposed to hold on to those prisoners, but he hasn't done that. I wonder why. But whatever it is, it's bad. We don't know why he's keeping them, just that maybe because of his pride, but we know that it's a violation of the rules. And Westmoreland now brings up, this is his uncle's teaching. This is Worcester. We're going to hear a lot about this Worcester. "Malevolent to you in all aspects, which makes him prune himself and bristle up the crest of youth against your dignity." That's amazing. I'm going to read that again. Listen how well Westmoreland, we haven't met Worcester yet, but we will. He may have made an appearance in Richard II, but we're really going to get to know him in this play. But look at how Westmoreland describes this Worcester. It's such a great description for not only this Worcester, but for, I think, lots of people in our time. "This is Worcester, malevolent to you in all aspects, which makes him prune himself and bristle up the crest of youth against your dignity." That's amazing. The king says, "But I have sent for him to answer this. And for this cause a while, we must neglect our holy purpose to Jerusalem." All right, no crusade this time. "Cousin," talking to Westmoreland, "on Wednesday next our council we will hold at Windsor. So inform the lords. But come yourself with speed to us again. For more is to be said and to be done than out of anger can be uttered." And Westmoreland says very simply, "I will, my liege." Exeunt, they leave. King Henry IV, very organized, no matter what's going on, good or bad, he just keeps a level head and he just keeps going, just turns to do whatever the next thing is that he needs to turn to. This is what he does, and if he has to accept he's not going to go on crusade, he doesn't sit and lament about it like Richard II might have done, but he just says, "Okay, we're going to deal with this. So inform the lords, we're going to meet next Wednesday. But come back to me after you tell them," right? Because I guess they can't text in those days, so you got to go and tell them in person, and then come back here because we got more work to do. And Westmoreland says, "I will, my liege." Till next time. Thank you.